Good morning, thanks everyone for coming. Bonjour, bon matin. Je m'appelle Alex Doherty, ou simplement Doc. I work for Lenovo in our ISG or data center division. I'm kind of a channel sales engineer, jack of all trades, wearer of many hats. And joined by our keynote speaker, John Inciso, today to discuss. Good question. Anything and everything, I believe.
Modernization of infrastructure, right?
Yes, so we have two sessions today. I know that there are three tracks. I think there was Lead, Optimize, and Develop. Yes, as defined by Quadbridge. And we have two very similar sessions today. The first one is going to be more on the, called the philosophical aspect of things, called more strategic, led by John. And I'll be having a similar session later this afternoon on the more practical aspects of it. So this will be more about thinking of big problems, and mine is more about how to hack the menu at McDonald's to get lower price and free cheese. So it's going to be kind of an open discussion. I think John will be leading the way, and we'll try to make it as interactive as possible. So any questions or comments, please feel free to raise your hand. Anglais ou français, it's all good. I can translate as needed.
So let me start off by asking everybody.
Hey John, can you talk to the mic?
Okay, let me start off by asking everybody. You heard me talk about innovation, about optimization. You guys might have to take my jacket off. I'm an engineer. It's kind of annoying to walk around in the jacket. It's like, things get caught in server land. So you guys heard me talk about innovation and optimization. Cutting complexity, cutting costs. How many people here have a mandate from their CFO or their business leader to reduce costs in IT? Okay, so let me, by the way, I don't want this to be another presentation. I really want this to be a dialogue with everyone. So let me ask the audience, what are some of the things that you're thinking about doing to reduce costs? Yeah.
Move back to on-prem. Move back to on-prem?
Go towards enterprise licensing for Apple warranties.
Okay. So move back to on-prem, go to enterprise licensing. Yeah.
Removing legacy technologies and technical debt.
Removing legacy technologies and technical debt. Anybody else that wants to be brave and speak up? Yeah.
What I did, I renegotiated the cost for circuits. I was paying money.
Okay. So renegotiating some of your contracts.
Oh, I think we have one more, and then I have kind of a follow-up question.
Nuking Broadcom from orbit.
Nuking Broadcom from orbit, if only.
And I guess it's kind of a follow-on question to that, or spin-off it, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, there's ways things you've done to lower the price, but have there been any unexpected cost raises lately for everyone, besides that particular elephant in the room?
Let me ask a question. You start with a couple different things. When we think about cutting costs, what we're really talking about is improving efficiency to drive out inefficiency, right? We want to drive out either money or operational processes. So a lot of what I've heard from everybody talk about so far is rebalancing workloads, it's renegotiating, and it's cutting things. And those are all things that we need to do. Those make immediate ROI. Remember, part of what I talked about was thinking about why, and sort of that transformation journey. How many people here have reevaluated your IT processes? So good, a couple folks have raised their hand. One of the biggest things that I find that drives inefficiency and drives up cost is what I call finger-driven automation. Right, know what that is? So that's where this is traditional IT from the 2000s, 2010s, right? We have to deploy a project. We need to find a body to go do it. And then we stick that body in front of a keyboard and they start typing things. Right? They're on a command line, they're in a GUI, They're automating by using their fingers and their personal brain. When we think about cost optimization, we need to not just think about cutting. Because when you're cutting, what you're doing is you're removing things out of the business. And that's okay to do that. Like you brought up removing legacy. Let's be honest. How many people here still have legacy technology in your infrastructure? Oh, anybody that didn't raise your hand? Surprise. You don't really know what you have in your infrastructure. I can guarantee you that there are legacy technologies floating around somewhere. Two things about legacy. One, legacy gets a bad rap. It's probably legacy because somehow or another it's driving business. But two, in order to drive efficiency, you can't just come in and try and replace legacy technology with technology. You have to look at why it was there. That's the first thing I want you guys to think about. The next thing is, anybody here bought a house? So, anybody here sold a house? So when you went to buy a house, if it was the only house you looked at and the seller decided to raise the price, what did you have to do? You had to negotiate. If it was the only house that you were looking at, so for example, my lovely wife, we moved to North Carolina, she said, I only want a house that's this big. We looked at a whole bunch of houses and she went, no. She found one house and she said, that's the house. And of course, I love my wife, I love being married, and so I said, absolutely, honey, that is the house. Well, guess what? I now had no way to negotiate because I had one thing that I could negotiate on. So when you think about cost optimization, so I gave this talk to a bunch of CIOs, think about this concept of what I call infrastructure modularity. And infrastructure isn't just stuff in a data center. Infrastructure modularity gives you the ability to negotiate. If you do not have a second source for cloud, for on-premise, I don't want you to buy anybody else's laptops, but you should be talking to other vendors. I don't want you to buy servers from anybody else, but you should be always talking to other vendors. I sell stuff. I will charge what the market demands. If you don't have a second source, A, you learn nothing from the pandemic, right? Where you went and you bought whatever you could get your hands on. And B, you have no ability to negotiate. How can you talk to Broadcom if they have basically held you hostage because you haven't looked at what other options are out there? And if you haven't looked at what other options are out there, how do you now have the ability to think about doing things differently? You're beholden to a single vendor's roadmap, a single vendor's price, and a single vendor's way of doing things. So part of cost optimization is reevaluating how you do stuff, why you do stuff, and what technology you use to do stuff, because that's how you get flexibility. That's how you're able to start driving costs out of the business. It's by looking at, here's all my applications. These really need to be here. Here's how we deliver technology. Should I rebalance? Everybody here know what application rationalization means? So for those that don't know what application rationalization is, you've probably already done this. I'm just giving you a fancy term you can use with your peers to impress them. So application rationalization is basically looking at all the applications that you have and deciding, does it need to be retired? Does it need to be re-platformed? Right? So moving it maybe from cloud to on-prem. Does it need to be rewritten? Because maybe it was written on a legacy code base and it needs to be updated. Or does it just need to be re-architected? Maybe you're going to take that web server and instead of running it as a web server, it's now going to be a container. So it's simply deployed. That's one way to start driving costs out of your business. Is thinking about looking at what are the technologies you're using and how can I modernize them? How can I retire them? How can I get second sources so I know how to negotiate them? Okay? Questions? Again, be quiet. Small room. Almost friends. I guarantee you any of your IT sins have probably been committed by at least one other person in the room.
You talked about applications. Sometimes you get so deep for development's out, we're already 1.2 million in, and it's still not functioning. You know, well, I would say, we already spend this much money, even if we spend another X amount of dollars to put it off the ground, that's the hardest part sometimes when you touch the process.
So those that didn't hear, so it's how do I determine when to cut my losses and walk away? Remember that book I talked about, what the CEO wants you to know? Put it on your reading list. It's an audio book. So this, what you're talking about, is what's called the sunk cost fallacy. So this is the same thing that we see for gamblers. Right? I've spent $100. I've lost. The next hand, I'm going to win. One of the things that I do is I talk about looking at IT through the lens of the business. So if I've invested $1 million in SAP and I still don't have it functional, then I need to look at three things. Do I have the right technology? Am I solving the right problem? Is SAP the right tool for that problem? And three, if you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with a partner, do I have the right people trying to execute? And if you come back and any one of those is a no, then that's open for reevaluation. If all of those are, do I have the right technology? No. Do I have the right people? No. Am I solving the right problem? No. That gives you the opportunity to walk away. It's better to cut your losses now than keep throwing money down the drain, right? Here's what I tell people. Think of an IT project as a boat. Everybody knows what a boat is, right? What is a boat? It is a hole in the water in which you pour money. Which is kind of like if you have a video surveillance system that all you do is continue to back it up. It is a disk onto which you continue, a disk in a system in which you continue to pour money and get nothing out. It is better to cut off the spigot and change. And that's painful. There's an opportunity cost with changing. There's an opportunity cost with going from, say, VMware to Nutanix, VMware to Azure Stack, VMware to OpenShift. Part of that should go into the evaluation. But if you're 2 years into a project, there's no ROI, you're continuing to throw money at it, that's the gambler's mindset. That's the sunk cost fallacy. Oh, I mean, how many people here, I used to work for IBM, and I'll beat up on IBM. I used to work there, and I'm allowed to do that, right? You're allowed to beat up your own family. So, we used to have a product called IBM Director. That was our systems management. Every quarter, what we were told is, the features that you want will be coming out next quarter. Every quarter. Everything we wanted was always 1 quarter away. That's how you're going to end up wasting time, money, and effort. Something else I want everybody to think about. How many people here thinking about modernizing and cutting costs? How many people here know what a pipeline is? When we talk about a pipeline, I know Steve knows. For sales, we think of a sales pipeline. How many people here have a talent pipeline? A couple folks, right? How do I cut costs? I start creating a talent pipeline where I can bring talent in. I'm telling you to get rid of all your old people. I'm an old person. I don't want them to get rid of me. But you start bringing younger talent in that you can grow, and you do a battle line. You put a younger person
This is real.
with an older person. And then they actually learn from each other. That younger person is less expensive talent with fresh new ideas, and I can then incorporate in, and I'm bringing what I know to the younger talent. That's a way to reduce costs. Questions? Doc, fill us with wisdom while I take a drink.
Why aren't you taking my fashion tips yet?
Not gonna happen.
Excellent. And you talked a lot about applications, platforms, kind of more software side of things and the data aspects, but also in terms of hardware. How are you guys looking at your inventory, looking at your spend, the opportunity cost of not upgrading, your costs of on-prem versus reusing in the cloud? What tools, applications, or kind of frameworks are you using for that?
How are you determining how much resources your infrastructure, whether it's on the cloud or on-prem, consumes? Do you guys have a holistic view of that? Do you have a agnostic view of that?
For us, it's, on a regular basis, upgrades on is determining cost, the whole cost, and then determining whether we've got most of our stuff in the cloud, except for our VMs and a lot of things. And every time we go get quotes on that to move it out, it's substantially more expensive than what it costs. So those are the two things that still have to do, what everything else is outside. It's all about trying to get that full cost and then have an operation.
And you mentioned that being a time of upgrade. Does everyone look at this periodically in real time, constantly?
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat the question there at the bottom?
Oh, sorry about that. The question was about how often do you look at your resource utilization, your capacity versus what you're using, what you're paying for it? The gentleman here had mentioned that it was mostly around the time of.
Generally, for our iSeries, we run our ERP on it, so it's when we look at it's time to upgrade and the system's had its end of life, and then we do a decision on whether we should be moving that into the cloud with Oracle or our service provider or keep it internal. And then the other are VMs. And then you're asking me, it's a time of upgrade. We look at it pretty often because I get phone calls all the time and they tell me, yes, we've been moving in. But generally for our 120 VMs, it's $200,000 or $300,000 more a year to put it in the cloud this year or maybe in places. So we don't. So I wouldn't say we wait till upgrades on. We run 3 servers that we upgrade every 5 or 6 years and SAN upgrades every 5 or 6 years. But I mean, if someone came along and said we can move the cloud for a reasonable price and everything else, we do it. But so far we haven't got that. So I mean, you hear people bringing stuff from the cloud back in, we never put those two things in the cloud. And we're pretty happy with that decision. It's not a cloud first or a cloud only, it's a cloud decision to be made. And we evaluate it all the time.
And for those of the more, say, high-end workloads, ERP systems on, system-wide, maybe more x86 type stuff, is anyone able right now to look at what you have capacity-wise, what you're using, how much is costing, call it per VM, per workload, or XYZ metric, and have the ability to move it to or from cloud to make sure you're paying at least amount, we're getting these services at uptime and reliability you need? Is that a capability you have right now? You want to tell us a bit about how you do it?
Well, we've moved almost everything off of VMware at this point to a combination of Nutanix and OpenShift, and so we use a combination of the tools that come with those two ecosystems to be able to see what our capacity is, forecast out, especially with Nutanix, I can look at it and see how much it would cost to run workload on our local cluster versus putting it in either Azure or AWS pretty simply. And when I get all of the cloud first and cloud only executives in our company, I can just show them those numbers and then they go away. So
we beat the one this afternoon, we can't quote you. Thanks.
So I think where Doc was going with that, so we have a solution. You guys can partner with QuadBridge to deploy it, and it will look at your infrastructure on-prem and cloud. It can map what VMs talk to what VMs. It can tell you what you're actually using versus what you think you're using over a month. So you get a 95th percentile accuracy. And you can also look at what it costs to run that in the cloud, in my tenant. This is a great thing for you guys to have because it gives you data to have a data-driven financial conversation with your organization. And that is critically important. It's not just we think we'll be less expensive in the cloud, or Azure's tool told me it would be less expensive to put it in the cloud, because let's be honest, you run a cloud provider's tool, it's always going to tell you it's less expensive to do it there. This is agnostic, by the way. The company happens to be in Toronto.
Toronto, yeah.
Yeah, so they're a Canadian company that we partner with to do this. You guys can work with QuadBridge, you can deploy it in your infrastructure and start getting that data today. If you're thinking,
What's it called?
It's called OneIQ.
It's typically a paid engagement, but Lenovo channel partners, QuadBridge included, can run it at no cost to you. For 30 days, and it's real-time analytics. You can log in whenever. It creates a shared workspace, which is great because you can do simulations, load testing in real time, as well as collaborate with QuadBridge and other technology vendors to work on it all together. And we'll be covering that this afternoon as well.
Awesome. So what else? What other questions do you guys have while you're trying to figure out how to cut costs, improve efficiency, reduce risk? Again, I don't want this to be me proselytizing. I want you guys to tell me what you're trying to solve. I know you're working with Steve and company to do some of that. This is an opportunity to voice the question that is burning in the back of your mind, like, how do we get off of VMware, right? Or should we go to containers? How many people here are looking at AI? Here's my first question to those that have raised their hand. Why? What does that mean?
Right now, we're focused on more conversational data.
So conversational AI. Thank you. So you're focused on conversational AI.
Yeah, so deploying chatbots for helping our users on board, integrating with our ServiceNow platform, or reducing password resets is like the number one ticket use case for the service desk. So how to automate those features.
Same for a couple other folks. So how do you measure ROI?
So there'll be two factors for it, the way we're looking at it. One is obviously the amount of resources we spend on the service desk from a R&D standpoint, and have a reduction in that, which is a direct impact. But then again, also working with our business leaders such as HR and other areas that we're trying to deploy on and get feedback from them, how it's impacting their bottom line.
Okay, that's great. That's exactly what I want to hear, right? Biggest thing I hear when I do consulting engagements with folks is they go, we need to do AI. First question is why? Because a lot of times folks are trying to solve with AI what is actually not an AI problem. It's a business process problem. It's a bad data problem. I can't tell you how many folks I've worked with that are like, if we just had some AI to fix this problem of getting our data, I'm like, okay, that's the wrong way to think. Figure out what's causing the bad data first and fix it. Otherwise, you're going to invest a whole lot of money cleaning up the mess on the back. The other thing is, the reason I asked why, and the reason I asked ROI, remember, picture, it's the Sith Lord who's an accountant, right? Except his lightsaber is a pen, and his shield is a calculator. If you can't articulate in a number that makes sense to a CFO why you're making an upgrade, why you're reducing costs, you're not going to be able to justify the expense to drive the cost savings. Think about these kinds of terms. How does it impact the revenue per user? How does it impact the internal net promoter score for your organization? How does it save time, and time calculated into money? So when you're thinking about, for example, big use case. How many people here use ServiceNow? How many people here for help desk tickets use some type of SaaS platform? How many people here, every time you solve a problem, you create a fact or a knowledge base? How many people here rely on keyword search and tribal knowledge to be able to figure out if the problem you're solving is actually documented? Probably most of you. It's a great solution for AI. AI can start extracting information out of help desk tickets and make it real-time usable. This is a great use case for generative AI. 5 minutes, thank you. So think about, remember I talked about innovating internally first. This is a great thing for you guys to make it easier for your people to support tickets, to make it easier for your end users to find information. We created something, I didn't name it, I just consume it, it's called Robbie the Robot. It's a chatbot. It's backed by some generative AI, a database of information. So you can ask it in non-IT terms how to do something, and it gives you in non-IT terms how to do it. That reduced our call center volume by about 30%.
And John, one thing I would say too about Robbie in this case is that it is built within Teams. It references just a bunch of OneDrive and SharePoint files. And the AI development studio within Teams is included with 365. There's a very good chance that everyone here already has the tools. There's a ton of information. I tried building one the other day. I watched about an hour of YouTube, and I got some pretty good results out of it. So there's a good chance they're already paying for that capability. And all of that data, all those FAQs and walkthroughs, tribal knowledge, and Teams pages, etc., they already exist. It's just a matter of ingesting that, training it, and deploying it. And you're already paying for most of the tooling to do that.
Other questions? I know we only have 5 minutes, so I'm happy to proselytize, but I'd rather sit down with you guys. Maybe it's over drinks tonight because you're too shy to speak in group. But what other thing would you like to solve? What do you want to walk away from this session with? What's the one thing you're like, John, I wish you would have talked about X. If you're too shy to do it, I'm happy to do it over drinks tonight. But who's got something that they just want to ask? They just want to help figure out how to solve. I've never sat in a room full of a bunch of IT folks that were shy.
One of the biggest issues that our company has is we're global. And a lot of the problems we have with hardware is the differences in global shipment, global deployment, global management. Is there any advice you can give on how to handle it when some of my team is in Algeno, Germany, some of it's in Mauritius, and some of it's in the United States?
So that is where, a couple things. So that is where first leveraging partnership, collaboration becomes helpful. That's where working with your OEM partners. So I work with a lot of our global accounts. One of the things that helps is to set up a global standard that everybody uses. Everybody, here is your global order book that you can order anything here from because IT has set up the standard policies, procedures, images, deployment technologies. That's going to accelerate it. Then, work with folks like QuadBridge, work with folks like Lenovo, to make sure that you have, ideally, you want shipped from country to the end user. You don't want to be shipping international. That's one of the other things you can do. So you can say, hey, I want to buy it, but I don't want it to be bought here and shipped. I want to buy it in country. That's one of the ways that we do a lot of that.
And John, I would say too, I'm sure all our major competitors can do this as well. We can set up one kind of standard model called the DNA, and then we can include the language-specific image, the appropriate cord, whatever service levels available in region. Of course, they will have different prices. But you can negotiate a standard base price in the HQ country, and then that can automatically update, account for exchange rates, and produce unique product numbers per region. So it's working typically with one sales team at an OEM who can then set that up and then
you can share that information, and pricing will be pre-approved with the different countries.
I think I have time for one last question. Yeah. It seems like the last, well, since broadband took over VMware, a lot of people trying to get out, and I took a different approach, is that we don't spend a ton on it, and maybe a lot of work to move it. I think that's what we hear from people. So instead of doing some of those projects like that, where yes, it'd be great if I snap my fingers and make it something cheaper, but I'd rather spend my time doing a bit of what you're talking about, getting data in people's hands. And you only have so many resources, and I mean, I just spoke to business people, IT people, but I got some people that kind of can do both. So if you got off VMware and said, wow, look at that, we saved 50,000, 100,000, but if I can get data in people's hands and understand the value of that, hopefully making millions of dollars versus saving that stuff. So just food for thought. Sometimes savings costs aren't always the best way.
So, agreed. That's what I talked about, right? Either saving money or you're making money. At the end of the day, you got a budget when you got to hit it. So, one of the things that I do, I've been doing this for about 18, 24 months, is I do a workshop with a lot of folks where we talk about what we call de-risking from VMware. And the goal is not to tell you what product you should be on. It's to make a informed business decision of what you should do. Because for some folks, you should stay, frankly. Grin it and bear it. But if you've invested in vSAN, maybe you look at external storage now, so you don't have to buy as much VMware. Maybe you look at updating to newer processors, newer systems, so you can reduce your licensing costs and get the same performance. Those are kind of things to be thinking about when you're doing it. And happy to have that conversation with anybody. I think Steve and team can help with that as well, right? They can come in and do that kind of analysis. Am I done? All right. Anybody else? Questions? Drinks tonight? I am happy to answer every and all. Oh, and we have a room as well somewhere if you guys just want to pop in and chat. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming.